Of course, as usual, we need to hear the experts. And as usual, we have here our colleagues in the studio, Mr. Naeem. Mr. Naeem, how are you?
I'm doing great. Glad to be here.
Thank you very much. What have you got for us tonight?
Well, we're going to simplify the big buzzword called big data.
Okay.
We're going to simplify that and help our viewers to see how does that help us, what's happening, and things of that nature. Very excited.
It is very interesting also because many people, we hear about the big data, but not much many people can figure it out.
Big data, in very simple terminology, is just lots of data. Just lots of data.
Yes, indeed, it is.
and we were talking about earlier about the currency component. Data is really the new currency, because the reason why people hack your systems is because they're after your data. And then they hold ransom against it, and then people actually sometimes end up paying for it. I'm going to start off with an example of, you might have noticed that, let's say if you and I are discussing going to a trip, for example.
Yes.
Let's say somewhere in Greece.
Greece, yes.
And 2 days later, or maybe 2 hours later, you and I will both start getting messages about vacation plans in Greece and cruises and all this wonderful things. So it's not magic.
And we take with us Mr. Hussein?
Mr. Hussein will
definitely.
He
loves the cruise. I think he goes on the cruise.
Definitely.
100%. Yeah,
we really appreciate it.
Wonderful, wonderful. So what's happening in the background is really our phones and our smart devices are actually listening into our conversation, and that data is being populated. So somewhere in the cloud there is these big servers, or what we call them data warehousing solutions. They are actually capturing that data, and then significant amount of analytics is being run on it, or algorithms that actually keep on looking at the segmentation. They say, okay, well, Mr. Hussein and Dr. Anwar and I, we'd like to go to cruise, for example.
Yes.
They're going to keep on, okay, they would identify the
Cruise
persona.
and eat some fish on the cruise.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Fish and chicken too. And that's what the big data is actually doing.
Yeah.
So from the engineering perspective, there are actually 3 different components of, historically it used to be 3, and now they have been added on to a few more KPIs. So for example, volume, as I mentioned, that big data is just huge amounts of data.
Yes.
And the velocity in terms of which direction of data are we looking at from the vertical indexing perspective, and the variety of it. I mean, here the system would actually recognize that, okay, well, these 3 guys not only talk about cruises, but they also talk about fish, for example. So that's the variety of data. And the data can exist into structured form and non-structured form. So the structured form could be an example of an Excel sheet, for instance, where we have rows and columns, and non-structured data could be an example of handwritten stuff. The veracity of data is in terms of what is how much data can it be trusted, or is it just random data? Then variability and all different aspects of it. So all of different aspects put together is something is referred to as big data.
Okay.
And there are various companies around the globe. They're very, very sophisticated. They're massive infrastructures that they're actually some of the major players around the world. They all play in this game, be it Microsoft, Google, AWS, Oracle. So they all have these great, fantastic data warehousing solutions.
Good.
Now I'm going to talk about in terms of how does that help in our day-to-day life, I mean in the enterprise world. Let's take an example of finance, where we all have bank accounts, and then banks usually do invest very wisely into the data warehousing solutions. Let's say the banks also want to protect your identity, your transactions, and so that your accounts are not hacked, for example. So they do their due diligence, and they're part of the being a service provider. So imagine a person's regular transactions are, A, B, and C. They go to eat pizza, they travel to point A to point B, and the banks know, okay, well, this is the pattern that Naeem does every certain days.
Then?
Out of the blue, if the bank notices a transaction happening somewhere in Africa for me.
Yes.
They're like, okay, no, Naeem was here yesterday. How come Naeem flew over to Africa and came back? This transaction in Africa does not make sense. Or I'm just using an example. It could be any part of the world.
Yes. There is
So
a question mark.
The bank will put a question mark on it.
Okay.
And it's the bank's technology is the big data that is doing that.
Yes.
So that will help prevent the fraud that could impact and the customer experience that I would have with my bank, and I would actually be grateful to my bank saying thank you for really watching out for me because I did not travel, I was here. But any of those scenarios, so it's the power of big data that is actually happening on the back end. So that's one example of a finance system. Similar examples could be in the scenario of healthcare, for instance. Healthcare could be, it's the amount of data not only for that individual, but also the historical data of their family.
Yes.
So let's say if there is a disease or disorder that has been hereditary, kind of following through the family, they can actually, with the help of big data analytics or complex event analytics, they can actually predict and prevent and inform early that these are the mechanisms that steps A, B, and C that you need to do to prevent that,
yes,
which is a great thing.
Well, this is a very good thing. This is a very helpful thing for us to predict what are causing those diseases, for example,
right,
and to prevent them somehow.
100%. So that's another example in healthcare industry. Now, let's take an example of a retail scenario where imagine you're going to a particular mall with Mr. Hussein, and all three of us are going there, and then we pass by a particular coffee shop, and we get an SMS message saying that, would you like to try our new coffee?
Yes.
And mostly we all love coffee, so we say, yeah, sure.
With chocolate.
Right, with chocolate, 100%. So when we go inside, now we all have these loyalty programs of different kinds with different, call it any kind of store. The loyalty programs are residing on top of this big data platform. So they know that these three wonderful gentlemen are at a coffee shop, and they are also promoting a new cookie, for example, or new flavor of chocolate.
Yes.
And that allows the retailer to be able to upsell and cross-sell. That says, Dr. Herbie, we know that you like chocolate.
Yes.
We have this new mixed flavor of chocolate with strawberries, and would you like to try that?
Yeah, I would like to.
100%. So all of that data is being processed in the back end, and it also based on the 5G technologies. 5G technologies knows when you are traveling. It keeps on alerting, gives the alerts that you are here. And that being connected with a coffee shop, and for them to be able to do a database lookup into their data warehousing system, come back and says, Dr. Herbie likes the chocolate and the strawberry, so they're going to not only upsell that to you, but also keep track of it.
Making more profits, increasing the sales. And of course, but don't you think this infringe the security or privacy part? I mean, somehow, but
yeah,
it's not critical, isn't it?
Right, it does, but that's part of the terms and conditions that when we sign up for.
Exactly.
So that's we give.
We would like to know what's going on in these new shops,
right.
Perhaps. Yes.
Human practices, most of us don't read those 10 pages of very fine print, but we do give the consent on that. And the last example I'm going to talk about is in the telecommunication industry, for example.
Yes.
Now imagine if you have 4 or 5 numbers or SIM cards from a particular telecom operator. For whatever reason that you are not happy or with that service provider, and you try to deactivate one of the customers. Now, the telecom who has invested into the big data platform, they would see this as a flag that, okay, Naeem had 5 numbers, now he's dropped off 1 number. That's say, well, maybe Naeem is going in the direction of one by one eliminating the numbers. So what the telecom would do is they would actually engage an outbound campaign and saying they would reach out to me and say, Mr. Mirza, we noticed that you have shut down one of your lines. Is there any reason? Or maybe I'm not happy. So they can try to rectify that problem.
Okay.
And then try to win my heart again, going back with
It's very important to win your heart.
Right.
Without winning your heart, they will not be committed to not buy, you will not do anything.
Absolutely.
In everything aspect of life, you see. They have to be in marketing and everything in the social life. They have to get this.
Everything has to be likable. If we all, we are humans at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I mean, if we don't like something, we would not do business with them. So yes, winning the hearts is the way to go about it.
Nobody can oblige you. Nobody can force you to do so.
Absolutely.
Change the future's direction. From robots that roam to AI's might, we'll break down the tech and set your mind alive. Cybersecurity shield.